On our discussions on Israel and Gaza, as I said at the weekend, we see this in four very clear ways. One, we back the hostages and their families, who are now in day 185 of their appalling captivity. We go hard on getting aid into Gaza. It's the right thing to do, and what was previously seen as impossible is now possible, and that is hugely welcome. We want to see that followed up. We believe in leading internationally, both at the United Nations, where we achieved a good resolution on a temporary ceasefire during Ramadan, and also putting together countries that back and support a future peace process such as met in Munich, and we hope we'll meet again shortly. But the fourth part of our plan is to support Israel in its legitimate right of self-defense to deal with the Hamas threat, and it's important we maintain that support. On aid, just to be clear, as Tony said, we want to see 500 trucks a day. We want to see the water switch back on. We want to see Ashdod and a northern crossing point opened. And crucially, we want to see this deconfliction, because getting aid to Gaza on its own isn't enough. You've got to be able to get aid around Gaza. And as we saw with the tragic killing of the World Central Kitchen workers, unless you have that deconfliction, other things like that could happen. We have a very clear plan A for how we bring this conflict to an end. We have a temporary pause. We turn that into a sustainable ceasefire. We see Hamas leaders removed from Gaza. We see the terrorist infrastructure taken down. That is the way to have a political process that brings the war to an end. But we have to be aware, if that doesn't work, we have to think about what is plan B. What can humanitarian and other organizations do to make sure that if there is a conflict in Rafah, that people can achieve safety, they can get food, they can get water, they can get medicine, and people are kept safe. And I think that's something we're going to have to be looking at, and we were talking about today. Finally, on the other things you mentioned, I totally agree that AUKUS is a really important alliance, and I think one of the ways we can make it a success, as well as making sure we build our submarines and invest on time, is making progress on the ITAR regulations. If we're going to have a partnership as close as this between three like-minded countries, we must be able to have the free flow of munitions between us. Thanks. On Israel and international humanitarian law, as required by the UK's robust arms export control regime, I have now reviewed the most recent advice about the situation in Gaza and Israel's conduct of their military campaign. The latest assessment leaves our position on export licenses unchanged. This is consistent with the advice that I and other ministers have received, and as ever, we will keep the position under review. Let me be clear, though, we continue to have grave concerns around the humanitarian access issue in Gaza, both for the period that was assessed and subsequently. We've seen a welcome increase in trucks, with, as Tony said, perhaps as many as 400 going in yesterday, the highest since October the 7th, and of course public commitments from Israel to flood Gaza with aid. These now need to be turned into reality. Our position is in line with our international partners. So far, no like-minded countries have taken the decision to suspend existing arms export licenses to Israel, and I'd add that Israel remains a vital defence and security partner to the UK. Our cooperation makes the UK and Israel more secure from external threats. We will continue to use this robust legal process to assess these issues. And I just add, we don't publish legal advice, we don't comment on legal advice, but we act in a way that is consistent with it. We're a government under the law, and that's as it should be. On the issue of dropping diplomatic niceties, in many ways what I meant by that was, instead of sort of speaking in diplo-speak, when I address this issue of how we help Ukraine, I can get very emotional about it. To me, this is so fundamental to how Britain and America have worked together over years, over decades, to keep our world safe and to enhance our security. I think of my grandfather landing on the Normandy beaches under the cover of an American warship. I think of how I worked together with President Obama to deal with the ISIL threat in Syria and Iraq, how we hunted down those terrible killers of British and American hostages in the Syrian desert, Jihadi John and his like. And to me, this is the same thing. We face a huge threat from an aggressive Putin taking other countries' territory by force. And it is so important that we stick together This is the great lesson from NATO, celebrating its 75th